Welcome to the Law Firm Growth Podcast, where we share the latest tips, tactics, and strategies for scaling your practice from the top experts in the world of growing law firms. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. I'm your host as always, Jan Roos, and I am here with returning guest and one of my good friends in the legal industry, Sam Mollaei. Sam, how's it going?
Very good, Jan. So good to always reconnect with you and touch base.
Okay, awesome. So I wanted to do a little bit of a brief intro for people who haven't met you, but basically Sam was on the podcast. I actually looked up the date right before. It was in December of 2019. He has had an enormous couple of years, worked with hundreds of law firms since we last spoke. We have a lot to get into, but I'm really excited to. But for now, just for people who haven't met you before, what's kind of superhero origin story of Sam?
Sure. So I started my law firm about 7 years ago, but I got on the business side of basically being able to learn how to get clients online. And then I was able to kind of figure that out and then be able to replicate it over and over. And so now I run 7 automated virtual law firms. And I also partner up with other law firms to help them not just get clients, but also be able to automate the law firm. So using a lot of virtual assistants, using a lot of automations to have the law firm run on its own, operation for it to run on its own. And then while I was doing that, I basically started also teaching other lawyers and sharing everything that I was doing with other lawyers instead of a program that's called Legal Funnel. And since, that's been 2 years, and I've been able to talk to hundreds of lawyers during that time, understand exactly what they're struggling with, what they're successful at, what they're not, and I'm able to take that feedback and give it back to everybody, based on things that I've learned from everybody. So I'm all about giving. I'm all about sharing. And Jan, I know you're the same way. So that's why I think we get along so well.
Yeah.
And we're just here to kind of empower other lawyers to kind of run their own. I mean, my mission is to help other lawyers run their own automated law firm and do it with good energy and, do it positively.
All right, awesome, man. And I'll also say this too, just like, for anyone who hasn't met Sam, I really kind of consider you to kind of be like the Tim Ferriss of the law firm space. You've been doing such a fantastic job with, a lot of the stuff that touches so many aspects of running the law firm, which I found super impressive. I'm almost struggling to find a good way to start the conversation because there's so many ways we could go. But if I had to ask one question, what do you know now, almost 2 years from our last interview, that you didn't know last time we had on a podcast? Like, what have you learned from all these law firms that you've worked with?
I think I'm realizing more and more how attorneys need more help with being more efficient with how they're running their law firm. So, and it felt like a couple of years ago, it was more about getting more business, getting more clients. Now I'm running into this big issue that attorneys are overworked, doing a lot of different things, such as just practically, posting a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, doing a little bit of blogging. That's not the right way to do it, and kind of not being efficient with their time. So, lawyers need help and be able to surround themselves with a lot of people, employees, virtual assistants, people that can help them so that ultimately the attorney can focus on doing what they're good at and what they like doing. I think that's the true definition of success as a lawyer, is doing what you're good at and what you like doing. So yeah, that's the big goal for every attorney that I see.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, obviously people have their own preferences in terms of what they like doing, but as far as stuff that you see often, are there any commonalities in the common ways that people that are going through your program seem to be wasting their time when you end up having people that you're meeting with for the first time? Yeah.
The number one factor that I see from the successful students that we have from the ones who are not is first being open-minded to all these concepts, these new concepts of virtual assistants, automations, automated things, templates, things like that. I mean, if you're open-minded to it, that at least that opens you up to, change. Second is using technology to your advantage as much as you can. If I ever hear an attorney saying, well, what's the cost? What's this? Those are all things that kind of hold you back. Instead, your mind should go towards, what am I getting out of this? And if you, for any service, for any product or anything that you sign up for, if you ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? Even if I get 2 clients from this, will this be worth it? Then you realize that you've probably been bogged down too much with overthinking and not deciding to move forward just because you had those doubts about, is this worth it, is this not? So always, flip things backwards and always ask yourself, what will I get out of this? And if it helps you get 1 to 5 clients, then go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah. And I guess like, there's always the marketing applications of that, but also kind of the operation stuff too. Cause like I know sometimes people, they don't value their own time that much. Right. And sometimes, you're kind of you're typing, this is the other thing too. Process and mindset are very, very related. And you can have all the process in the world, but if it doesn't, if it's not something that you can bring yourself to do, if you can't see it, then it doesn't really matter. Like this is kind of just sort of top of mind. I was on I called my sales team earlier today, and it was like the thing is we were talking about targets for doing dials. And the thing is to hit the dial button on your phone takes 1 second. But some people find a way to take half an hour to do that because they're psyching themselves up. They're thinking about all the different things. They're distracting. I feel like there's a lot of parallels for that in pretty much any business that you could run. But that's super important as well. Like in terms of like kind of like some quick wins too, like what are you seeing as sort of important first steps for people that are kind of going through this journey, or like, key technologies or things that you think are important?
It's getting hyper focused with figuring out and doubling down on one specific source that's bringing you clients and following through with that one specific source. I think the problem that I see is people doing a little bit of a lot of things, and that really kind of kills your productivity and your results when you're doing that. Instead, ask yourself, what is the one source of the best source of client that I could do? How can I do that on a daily basis every single day? That's like an easy win to get the hyper focus on just one thing.
Okay, that's interesting. And like, what ends up happening when you have somebody who might be running like a general practice that comes in a legal funnel? Like, what's your advice for a person like that?
You can't.
Interesting.
Impossible. You cannot, no longer can you be a general practitioner. Even as there's an example is like a business lawyer. There's no such thing as being a business lawyer anymore. And I kind of realized this early on in my journey that I put out content, and once I started getting clients, I started analyzing, why did I get this client? Did I get this client because I was a business lawyer, or did I get this client because I was solving a very specific problem? So at that point, I started going after the specific problems and talking the language of problems versus putting myself out there as a business lawyer. So my niches became the problems, not what type of lawyer I am.
Yeah.
So have that in mind.
And just kind of to dig down to this, and I know your story personally, but for anyone who's not as familiar, could you give like the specific example of how you ended up doing that for your first law firm?
Yeah. So basically, long story short, I basically got an email asking, hey, can you do this service for me? And at the time, I had no idea how to do this specific service. I Googled it, and I found this obscure article with one other attorney who wrote about this. And I, read his instructions, and I basically was able to help my client. And then I'm like, hey, you know what? Let me go and rewrite this instructions and put it up. After I put it up, after a couple of weeks, I started getting, a couple of emails for it. Then a couple of weeks after that, a couple of more emails. And then fast forward 12 months later, I realized 80% of my clients was coming because of this one article, this one source. So that really, and then I basically, it was right at the time when I started learning about funnels. And I basically created my first funnel towards the service. And what was cool about this funnel was that it would basically bring in clients 24/7 around the clock. It would take them throughout the, so if somebody was searching for something, they would enter the funnel. My sales page would pitch them for my service. That would be sent to my application. They would fill out the application. They would fill out the questions that I need answered and make the payment. And here I was on a trip in Israel, and I would get notifications of these payments coming in while I was on a trip. And I could really open up my eyes to this whole like cool automated thing that Tim Ferriss, as you mentioned, was talking about. I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. This is kind of like the online business of the legal side. Let me try to recreate this. And for the next service, I basically, when I literally replicated the exact thing, created my second one, the third, fourth, every service that I could think of. I still have a folder full of like funnel ideas, about 30 funnel ideas. If I had all the time in the world, I would go make a funnel for every single one of those. And that really opened my eyes again to this whole world of online marketing, funnels, automations, all these things. It's really cool.
Yeah. I was going to say too, there's some really interesting things. So it seems like you went extremely hyper niche. If there was like one person in the entire country that you're able to find stuff on, like, right. Like, and it's powerful though, because it's like the returns that you get on that kind of focus. It's not like you focus in on that and, you get a 10% boost, right? You were one of a handful of providers that were able to do that. And then that's really when you get to the point where like, okay, like, you could probably you could build a house on a service like that. That wouldn't happen if you were a business attorney. And like, also, all of the investment. And this is actually something I want to ask you about too, because as far as building funnels, the more specific you go, the more you can really specialize, right? Like you couldn't, I mean, what would somebody with a general practice even be able to do from a funnel perspective?
Is at first you're going to figure out, you are this practitioner. So go back and analyze your last 12 months and be like, what was the most popular service that you were able to offer? And then ask yourself, what was the problems that they had before they came to you? And then you make your content and your funnels and your emails and your language and everything you talk about should be directed towards those specific pain points and specific problems that they have. And then as you shared, once your funnel is specifically addressing those specific problems, that's a lot more convincing than versus you business lawyer that you happen to do this. So, flip the language, the more specific you are in life, and the more specific you can explain your vision, the most likely your vision will come true. Well, the same thing with funnels and everything else.
Yeah. And like, I also got to say too, it's like, this is something that I've been thinking about for a super long time. Like way back in the day, I remember like when when I hung a shingle as a Google AdWords consultant, what we did that really differentiated was we did ads that matched landing pages. We went really niche. And the whole idea for that is that really helped out with the conversion rate, which is what we were measuring at the time. But it's because people, they land on the page and they're like, okay, well, these guys do this. I'm in the right place. This is the guy who can take care of me. And to think about how many more levels that you can go now versus back then in the day. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, you got the ad, you got the landing page, or however you're getting people to that. You got the sequence, you got the name of the consultation, you got the process that you're doing it. And everything is specialized to feed into the next thing. So by the end they get to the time there, it's like, obviously you're trying to be expert, but like you're just going to look so much more expert for the specialty that you're doing, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep. That's one of the secret sauces to marketing. Get very specific.
Yeah. I also say this too, sometimes like one of the things that we've kind of been running in, and like, this isn't something that you guys are doing, but I actually think I have a podcast that's going to be coming out a little bit after we record this one. But like, sometimes we have people say, oh, hey, can you like run this to some completely different service? Hey, just run the traffic to this. What would you say to a situation like that?
Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time and your money. Yeah, it's not going to work. You could always run micro tests. And for your micro tests, it doesn't take, right? Minimum viable funnel, a minimum viable landing page to test something. If it works out, then you go build out the back end and everything else.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
I guess. And that's honestly, like, this is kind of the thing too. It's like, I feel like a lot of times the people who build a funnel to nowhere, it's kind of like the people who have like the $20,000 website with no SEO from like 10 years ago. But kind of tacking onto that a little bit, obviously it's been a pretty turbulent year in the advertising world, to say the least. What are you recommending to clients as far as traffic sources for getting people into their funnels these days?
It just comes down to essentially just two sources for the most part. It's just either Google ads or Facebook ads. If you can make one of those two work, you probably will be A-okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of my client sources are just one of those two sources, just trying to crack that code.
Yeah. And as far as like, do you see any sort of recommendations changing based on the type of problems that people are solving? Like, what would be the major things you'd recommend someone in the direction of Facebook or Google?
So, usually by default, Google tends to be more popular and more better fit for most people because again, somebody has a problem, they search for it and they'll find you. Facebook is when they don't know that they have this problem. So for that's when you have to kind of interrupt them and tell them that they have this problem and educate them and then lead them down to, nurturing them and signing them up. So depends on the niche, and that's where we can get into inside our program. And at this point, I kind of exactly know for this niche, and this one makes more sense, and for this niche, this type of funnel makes more sense. But once you figure it out, then it just comes down to putting it up, tracking it, and continue refining it and sticking with it. Because a lot of attorneys that I see just start stemming up. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't work.
You go to the next thing.
Yeah, they go on to the next thing. It didn't work for me. I'm like, yeah, but did you stick through it for 3 months? And even 3 months, you just have to be willing to just stay in the game. The longer you can stay in the game, the more likely you become successful.
Yeah. And I'll also say this too. It's just like one of the things I think we're super simpatico on this, like, especially when we have the situations, 3 months of being all in on something is very, very different than 3 months of making 2 TikTok posts a week. And then I don't know. I've never done. I'm getting to the point where I feel too old about this. It's just not good. But like being, putting 1/8 of your attention towards 8 separate channels. It's like, okay, maybe you've been breathing the air for 3 months, but like where you're really focusing on it, right?
Yeah. Once you figure out paid ads, it's pretty much hands off at that point. You have your media buyer, your service provider, whoever's that taking over for you. and you have your goals, and it's doing its thing. And then once you have that time, then you do your organic TikTok posting or YouTube posting.
Yeah, it's like the old investment thing, right? It's like you get your blue chips, and then screw around with your 10% for fun if you want to, right?
Jan, I want to ask you a cool question. It's a random question. Do you think the lawyer space is going to move over, or the lawyer market is going to move over like even more into TikTok? Or is it just going to have its own niche, just kind of how Snapchat is kind of just has its own niche and that's it?
So this is actually super funny. This is the first time I've talked about this on the podcast. So thanks for bringing it up, Sam. I was extremely skeptical about TikTok, and just to get a little bit personal for a bit, I have never downloaded the TikTok app. I'm a extremely avid meme consumer, and I've had periods in my life where I was literally losing an hour and a half a day on Instagram. It's bad. So anyway,
it's not just you, it's everybody.
So I avoided TikTok for personal health reasons. But anyway, as far as it's super funny because I actually found something up, and we work really heavily in the estate planning space. I had somebody that I was working with, and he basically said, yeah, this is the craziest thing ever. I bought an insurance policy from an ad that I saw on TikTok. Mm-hmm. So that really opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, well, insurance products are generally not the kind of stuff that's being marketed to 17-year-olds, which what TikTok was in my mind. So I think it's possible. And the other thing too is just like for these things, it's one of these channels, like I was not super bullish on. What was that podcast app? Like that was the
Clubhouse.
Yeah, I wasn't bullish on Clubhouse. I was
not either.
But I think the momentum's behind TikTok to the point where it's going to be around for a couple of years at least, and it really is a completely discrete platform for Facebook. So I think there are people who are going to go out there. There's going to be pioneers that are doing really well. There's going to be pioneers that are going to wind up with arrows in their back. So I think at this point it's past the like innovator stage. I think we're in like the early adopter, which is when I try to hop in. So full disclosure, I'm going to probably run some tests the next couple of months on that. But yeah, I think honestly, you see people that are, and for us, I'm always with estate planning marketing, we have to think about what, the 55 plus consumer is doing. And there's a lot of people's grandmas on TikTok. It's a lot of people, grandpas, doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's an effective platform, which is why I've avoided it.
I've deleted TikTok from my phone 3 times already. It feels like a trap. I feel like it probably will probably hurt people and hold people back from growth more than it helps them if you're going to be using it for your law firm growth. So I think you have to have the personality for it. TikTok isn't for everybody. You kind of need to be out there and share your message. But I also feel like you cannot force it. Just because you hear TikTok works, quote unquote, doesn't mean you have to jump on TikTok. It has to work for you.
No, it's such a good point too. Because it's like, yeah, like if you don't want to be doing dances or like, if you're not a high energy person, it's going to be tough. I'm like, I heard a really interesting, I'm sure Alex Hormozy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to an interview with him, and he said something really interesting. Is like content marketing is not a fit for a lot of people. Content marketing is not a fit if you don't have something to say, if you don't have something to contribute, right?
Interesting.
One of the things that I think is very cool is that going the niche route means that you have something inherently valuable due to the rarity of what it is you're speaking about. If you're the only person to speak to a problem, which has been your approach as far as what we've been talking about recently, that's inherently valuable because, okay, if you're talking about this specific area of IP law or something like that, and everyone else is talking about the IP law broadly or business law, worst case scenario, then you don't have to be the most persuasive, you don't have to be Don Draper to get people to read that copy. You got what they want, right? So it's like, that's why I think it's such a powerful thing. And like also maybe to segue a little bit, I think it's also super important from the operations perspective, because now you've got the ability to bring people in. If you have one thing to fulfill on versus 12 different practice areas, what does that look like from the reality of getting that business automated?
Absolutely right. You got to find your strengths and double down on it and then hand off everything else. So yeah, it's the TikTok and necessarily YouTube and other things, not necessarily for everybody. So you just got to find your strength.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about the operation stuff too, I know something that we were speaking about actually a little bit earlier before this call, but I know that you've had a lot of focus on virtual assistants recently. So, and it's kind of interesting. I've seen a little bit of this like come up recently, and like I know you've probably known about virtual assistants. You've probably been using them since day one in the practice, right?
For 5 or 6 years now. Yeah. Ever since I read Tim Ferriss's book, that's when I started exploring it. And then I read, I think it's Michael Gerber's book about hiring virtual assistants. And then about 4 years ago, I basically did an analysis. We had about 8 or 10 virtual assistants, and I wrote down their name and how many hours they worked and how much I basically paid them for the entire year. And then also in my head, when I looked at this chart, I noticed that this VA that I paid $4,000 helped me make $50,000.
Wow.
This VA that I spent, one was $600 that helped me make $100,000, and another VA was like $12,000 that helped me replace 3 employees. And at that point, I'm like, whoa, like this is a crazy ROI for virtual assistants. So at that point, I made a promise to myself that I'm going to treat virtual assistants like they're free, and I'm going to try to get as many as I possibly could. That even if they waste, half of them waste your time, it doesn't matter because the ROI is so high, it doesn't really matter. So then we just try to fill up any position, anything, whatever I can get my hands on, go do. And then after some time, I'll just analyze whether it was worth it or not. If they're doing well, great. And then we try to increase the team, do more of it. If it's not, okay, cut them off. So did that over and over. I hired over 200 virtual assistants at this point. I have about 80 or so that I currently work with. They're all inside of my Slack. They're all, part of different organizations, different law firms, different teams. And, once you create your systems, your Google Sheets and your systems, then it's kind of like a living, breathing organism of people kind of operating and communicating with each other. And, they all have their goals that they're achieving. And then once they achieve their goals, they pass on to their next team and the next team, and it passes off to the other teams. And it's kind of cool to see. And I happen to, at this point, I tried only log into my Slack once every 2 days, just to see make sure everybody's doing their thing. And it's cool. I love seeing that. I love kind of being able to create it and just leave it alone and just be able to step away. And it's cool. And now I, confidently say that virtual assistants is the highest ROI business decision you can make for your law firm. So my entire operations, most of everything that I run is 98% virtual assistants. I do have in-house managers and directors who happen to manage or direct the operations, but the staff is usually most of the time it's virtual assistants.
Yeah. I got to say that might be the quotable of the episode so far. Treat virtual assistants like they're free. That's a really, really powerful mindset. And I'm going to probably start to, I'll be meditating on that for the next couple of days, but that's a fantastic tip, Sam. And also just as far as logging into Slack once every 2 days, I personally think that's a fantastic place to be at. I don't know how many other people are on Slack, but
it's kind of like your email inbox, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. But that's a fantastic place to be. So I want to go, obviously probably a little bit of trial and error that ended up getting to the place you can get there. But, I feel like the secret is out for the virtual assistant stuff as far as people knowing that it's an option, but we don't see a lot of people using it. So what do you think is stopping people from getting started on this journey as far as using virtual assistants for the first time?
I already know. Yeah. And because I hear all the time, it's like, what do I give them? I don't know what to give them. What are they going to do for me? That's number one. And two is they're not good. They suck. They're like robots. They're probably linear thinkers. Actually, just today I heard that from one of our students.
Interesting.
And I'm like, no, look at this person. I literally opened up my Slack. I'm like, you see this person? She's running my entire law firm right now. Like, yeah, she made these charts. She gave me all these charts without me even asking for it. And she's running the entire show. So first, let's address those two. The first is you got to figure out what you're doing, what tasks you're doing. So just a couple of months ago, I put out a training called How to Delegate 95% of Your Tasks by Hiring Virtual Assistants. And the first half of the training I actually did it based on this book called Free to Focus, where it helps you. So it's from this book. Super
cool. Yeah, Michael Hyatt,
where it basically helps you write down the tasks that you're currently working on. And it's split into 4 different categories. The first category is your drudgery zone, which is the stuff that you don't like doing and you're not necessarily good at. So you write down all those tasks. And there's a set of tasks that you are good at, but you don't necessarily like doing. And then there's stuff that you like doing, but you're not necessarily good at. And then there's the last zone, which is your desired zone, which is where everybody needs to be, is doing stuff that you're good at, that you also enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. So once you write down all these tasks, then the next step is for you to write down whether are you going to delegate this out to somebody, are you going to automate these other tasks, or are you going to eliminate? So once you do that, you see that you'll be able to hand off or automate or eliminate most of the tasks that you're working on. And then over time, you try to only work on those desired zone tasks that you enjoy doing. And the more you do that, the happier you will be. and the more successful. I consider that right now, that's my definition of success. If I'm working in my desired zone, and, I had a very successful day and I consider myself successful. That's the first thing. And then second thing is you got to change your mindset about virtual assistants. These VAs, I would say I'll come on and say and support them. Sometimes they're better than people here in the United States. They speak English pretty well. They're polite. They have good, amazing culture. They're loyal. And I have some VAs who've been with me for 5 or 6 years. They're amazing. So, I'm just putting out this, sharing this secret with you guys. Go hire your virtual assistants. I inside my program, I basically teach people how to hire virtual assistants directly. And there are also agencies that can help you recruit virtual assistants for your law firm.
Okay, gotcha. And for anyone who's considering this, like, if they think that, it's kind of funny. I was talking with a client earlier about getting a paralegal in place. Some people have a price tag associated with, $50,000, $60,000 for hiring somebody locally. What would it take to hire somebody full-time and a virtual assistant? And do you have to hire somebody full-time when you're starting out?
You should always look to hire people full-time. I learned this from my mentors, like if you hire part-time, expect part-time results. Mm-hmm. So hire people full-time so they could give you their full attention. And I would initially try to see if I can ask myself, can a VA do this? And I try to get a VA to do it. If they really can't, then I go hire a more controlled kind of in-house employee that I could kind of control them more and give them higher value tasks. What I do at this point, the zone I'm in, it's I kind of see it as a hybrid model with in-person directors managing the virtual operations.
Interesting. Okay. And then basically, and I want to take back to something you said that was super interesting. So virtual assistants as linear thinkers. Can you go into a little bit? Because I know that for anyone that are watching, this would be opposed to, a complex thinker or an original thinker, right?
Yeah. Most people think that the VAs are kind of one directional. I give you instructions, you do, and then you check back with me. That is only so if you treat them like that. So if you give them more power and you give them instead an objective and a goal, and you tell them very clearly, this is your objective, whatever it takes that you got to do to go accomplish this one objective, I'll leave it up to you, go get it. Then they'll be a lot more likely to open up and do things outside the box for you. So it just comes down to you. It's not their problem. It's actually your problem that you probably didn't delegate it properly. So always think about what is the number one goal, objective for this one VA. Let's say, 30, I need you to sign up 30 clients per month and make that their objective. And then you give them resources and give them the ways for them to do that, but you leave it up to them to go get that accomplished for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say too, there's it's kind of funny. There's this old Peter Drucker quote that I think is really awesome. There's nothing more worthless than something done very efficiently that did not need to be done at all. And a lot of the times too, it's like it kind of reflects on this the person who's getting the assignment, because it's like, a lot of the stuff, and I've been diving into a lot of, whatever culture, leadership, development type books as far as like the HR function, just, personally and stuff like that. And like a lot of the advice is good. It's like, tell somebody what to do and you're going to get what, give somebody a direction, and that's good. And it's kind of weird. I don't really know what goes into it, but maybe people aren't giving themselves permission to ask more of their virtual assistants. It's like, they might have woken up in India or the Philippines, but they went to bed, they ate 3 square meals that day. They got families. They like to think about things. They're not any different than you or me.
Yeah. And lawyers tend to micromanage too much because they're like perfectionists. So you got to let go. You got to be willing to let go a little bit. You could review their work, but don't tell them exactly how to do it. The more you do that, the more, harder. A VA or somebody's supposed to help make your life easier. So if you find yourself that you're like stressed out from hiring a VA, then you're probably doing it incorrectly.
Yeah. So, you get what you put in at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then the last thing too, just as far as like different areas too, like, is there any part of the world that you like to hire in from from the VA perspective? Any preferences?
Yeah, there are specific countries. I usually like sharing that secret sauce with people inside of our program.
Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. But there are very specific countries.
It's East Timor, isn't it? Liechtenstein? No, kidding.
there's also a lot of set of countries they should definitely avoid too. Not that people are so direct, but yeah, there's at this point I have a excluded country list.
The Sam's no fly zone. Gotcha. Okay. I was gonna say too, just in terms of other like general pitfalls to avoid, like, is there anything that you guys see that people do wrong, like that might have like left a bad taste in their mouth, or maybe they have a situation where they got burned on VAs before, that any tips you could have for somebody who's looking to get into this?
Yeah, just hiring from the right countries. is like the most, practical thing. Other than that, you got to give them trust and be nice to them. So if you're, you're going to give people positive reinforcement. So with all my VAs, I've never really got pissed off at them and saying, what the hell? I would say, great job, amazing. But next time, let's try to do this a little bit better.
Hey, gotcha. That's good.
So positive reinforcement all the way.
Yeah. And then kind of transitioning a little bit too. So in terms of automation too, we have kind of the human automation element, but also talking about like technology. And I know there's like specific tech stacks that people use or encourage with, or even stuff that you have, within what you teach. But kind of like broadly speaking, like what are the trends that you've been seeing recently? And like what's got you excited about technology that's entering the legal space these days?
That's a very good question. That's a great question. I see a lot of automation softwares coming out or being out. And there's a lot of debate, which one's the best, which one's not. You want to maximize on every tool that you do have and just use it properly. So, there are kind of, I don't know how to put this together, but for every tool, you always want to see how you can get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you're utilizing the tools to their advantage. And I know it's pretty obscure. That's one thing that I see. Let me see if I can come up with something better, even better than that. Obviously, there's video, taking advantage of full video, but that's not anything sexy. And I'm sure that's been talked about in 2020 and 2021. Yeah. Do you have any ideas that we could write off, Jan?
No, I'm trying to think. Well, and the other thing too is just like kind of like our conversation about TikTok earlier. It's like sometimes like, having the right criteria of something to do. Because I feel like sometimes people put the cart before the horse. They're like, oh my God, this sounds so cool. How can I fit this in my business? Right. Where it should be like, what do I need and what can I do to like kind of fill it out?
Correct. You kind of need, whenever a new tool comes out, don't jump on it yet, because I think it will distract you and kind of, will be like a shiny object syndrome. Instead, you need to see it being applied first. And that's what I always try to do with our students. Everything that I share is first, I do it for one of my law firms, two of my law firms, see how that goes. And then once I see it's working, hey, everybody, look how I've been able to use this. So find those people who actually have application of the application that they use and when they share. I hate people who talk in like obscure terms. My thing is like practical ways to be able to go use this program for your law firm. And that's what I always try to do it based on things that I've done myself for my own law firms.
Yeah. And I'll also give a quick shout out to the group that you have too. And this is also related to something former guest on the show, Ernie Svensson, he was talking about like basically like when he decides what technology he wants to use, it's like, can I think of two people I could call right now in case something gets blown up, right? That aren't customer support. And when you have the community that you guys have, as far as in the support as well, it's like, okay, cool. Like, you could have the list of all the software that Sam uses in a stack, but not getting everything that you need out of it is a completely different thing at the end of the day, right?
Correct. And you don't need to use a bunch of different tools. So kind of hyper focus again, exactly on those necessary tools that you absolutely need and just know how to maximize on it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Sam, this has been an awesome conversation. And I know I kind of teased this out a little bit earlier as far as the group you have, but like, what's the best way for people to take the next step with you or get in touch?
Sure. So if you're a law firm owner and you're kind of intrigued about, this whole automated virtual law firm. So imagine a law firm that's running on its own and it's virtual that you can run from your laptop. I basically have a Facebook group called Legal Funnel Members. If you just search for it instead of Facebook, people to join. Also, if you just Google Legal Funnel, you'll be able to learn more about the program and basically take all the lessons that I currently, again, do for multiple law firms. And I share that out with our students. And so far, we have 226 lawyers who have joined so far. And actually, this is leading to our bigger vision that I'm building out right now, is to have an educational platform to teach lawyers how to run their law firm. So this whole concepts of like automations, virtual assistants, how to work efficiently. Yeah. So that's my mission in life, to help empower other lawyers to run their own automated virtual law firm.
Okay, awesome. And I got to say too, I mentioned this in the beginning, but the whole, I know if we're anywhere 2 years from now, like the difference between from 2 years ago, which was impressive to start off with, I'll say, I'm expecting other bigger things from you in the future as well. So it's a train to jump on.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the mentality too, again, because everything is possible. It's just up to your imagination. So as far as my imagination would go, hopefully be able to kind of implement that going forward. Jan, I always wanted to give you props too for, again, staying consistent with everything that you do. You're somebody who's like mission driven, who's also a giver. I think we're very similar. So I'm going to empower you for your audience to continue growing and hopefully I know be able to work on different projects together and be able to combine our forces and, be able to help out more lawyers, hopefully.
All right. Awesome, man. That's what it's all about. Sam, thanks again. I super appreciate you coming on. And for everybody else, I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern on the Law Firm Growth Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. For show notes, free resources, and more, head on over to casefuel.com/podcast. Looking forward to catching up on the next episode.